Greetings, gentles. I want to talk about the unfolding tragedy involving the Malaysian airliner that disappeared as of late. Now, I could go the usual route and offer advice as to what actors would serve you and your patient best. I could talk about how the Malaysian government and how it stumbled out of the gate disunited, raising hopes prematurely, or how its absolute terror of not appearing in control and knowing everything led to feeding its citizens lies and contradictions. Or I could talk about how the media did not let a lack of information get in the way of continuing to stoke anxiety among its viewers and readers. Or how its insatiable quest for ratings employed absurd science fiction, talk of psychics, holograms, and more in their desperate attempt to fill the 24-hour news cycle. I could go on about how the victims' relatives abandoned calm and rational thought, and how they continually refuse to believe what is obvious to anyone personally, or not personally, I should say, connected to the passengers of the plane. Or how about the aerospace industry's rush to assure an uneasy public that it was most likely pilot error, pre-exonerating their machines? Lastly, I suppose, I could talk of how the public itself lusted for outside-the-box speculation and conspiracy. Well, I could talk about all these things, but I won't, as tempting as that might be. But I will say that all these actors behaved exactly as we have trained them, and we should be proud of the fact. And yet, I find myself without joy. I know this sounds heretical in some way, but as I watched the anguish of the passengers' relatives, I couldn't help but notice that I, a senior tempter, felt a trace of pity for these two-legged animals. Very puzzling. That pity, however, quickly turned to indignation. Indignation that the enemy would let such calamity befall those who had done nothing to deserve it. At least not yet. Why would he do this? What is his game? Then, my gentles, an epiphany. The enemy seeks to spread the contagion of empathy through calamity. Empathy for another is possibly the greatest tool in the enemy's arsenal with which to bring souls under his command. You know this. But at present the world is so full of noise and nonsense that empathic activity is scarce. So desperate is the enemy's situation that apparently the only way to arouse it is through random calamitous acts whose profound injustice would make even the most complacent human sit up and take notice. These spectacles, whether they be massive acts of terrorism or natural disasters, have been mounting steadily the last 2 centuries, totally random at times. The victims of these calamities are but martyrs the enemy has thrown upon the altar of empathy. You may quote me on that. Up until now, we have relied heavily on the fact that the creatures have had great difficulty extending empathy beyond certain biological and geographical boundaries. If someone lives within the same square mile as me, I am more likely to feel kinship with them than with someone who lives at 100 miles distance. If someone shares my bloodline, the same applies, and in fact, will probably trump geographical considerations. Of course, there is no rational basis for any of this, but the peculiar hardwiring which the enemy has endowed these creatures with makes it so. I fear that what he intends to do is to confront his creatures with these mass spectacles with increasing frequency, enabling them to transcend that unfortunate hardwiring. He aims to create what I call the Universalist, a creature who, through habit, has learned to walk in another's shoes no matter where the other lives, no matter what blood runs through their veins. Families, religions, nations, and other useful means of division will still exist, but only as tools of convenience and always subject to that ignoble notion of universalism. He seeks to create a creature who is aware of race, color, and creed, but laughs them off when they interfere with the ultimate goal of putting one's brother above oneself. A selfless universe peopled with universalists. Hell help us. Sounds like communism or the death of capitalism, of consumerism, and all we hold dear. The downside for us is immense. Should the enemy succeed with this stratagem, the creatures may well become immune to our counsel. And you know what that means. The wrath of hell has no equal, and our Father below no peer in its implementation. That is all.